Questo si chiama franco CFA. È la moneta coloniale che la Francia stampa per 14 nazioni africane alle quali applica il signoraggio e in forza delle quali sfrutta le risorse di questa nazione. Non è prendere gli africani e spostarli in Europa. La soluzione è liberare l'Africa da certi europei che la sfruttano e consentire a queste persone di vivere di quello che hanno.
You scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites all! For you set up the kingdom of heaven against men. You do not go in yourselves, nor do you let others enter. Blind guides! You strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. You bow before the letter of the law and violate the heart of the law. Justice, mercy, good faith. You are like whited sepulchres, all clean and bare without, but within, full of dead men's bones and all corruption. You see these stones, do you not? I tell you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Yours is a house of desolation, the home of the lizard and the spider. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can any of you escape damnation?
I don't profess to know the entire history of France, but I'm going to tell you what I know and its long involvement with Africa. For example, did you know that most of the Black Madonnas in Europe are in France? I will explain. Welcome to Black History Decoded, where I give insight into Black or African history that has been misrepresented over the centuries.
It is a highly structured society in which people live by strict codes of honor. For example, what Lutan did is similar to what certain American Indians once did called counting coup. That is from an obscure language known as French. Counting coup.
Mr. Data, the French language for centuries on Earth represented civilization.
Indeed.
That was from an episode called Code of Honor, Star Trek The Next Generation. That episode is very interesting because they're actually talking about a Black culture in our history. Sometimes movies or shows do tell you the truth, but you have to pay attention and do your own research.
Sicilians have black blood pumping through their hearts. And no, if you don't believe me, you can look it up. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you see, the Moors conquered Sicily. And the Moors are niggers.
The French language for centuries on Earth represented civilization.
The French language on Earth for centuries represented civilization. That is fascinating, right? You can look this up yourself. There are many, many French-named places in the United States. So the French were in America well before the English. They could have been there well before Christopher Columbus even. The Louisiana Purchase was the acquisition of the territory of Louisiana by the United States from the French First Republic in 1803. They had that huge tract of land for quite some time, and like I said before, a whole bunch of French names are all throughout the US. We don't talk much about France's involvement in America before the English, but they definitely were there. Note also that Catholic Church, which was a very, very powerful institution back in the day, was mainly in France. The Catholic Church also has connections to ancient Egypt. The Black Madonna and Child, Isis and Horus, the Sun, and the Fleur de Lis are very prominent symbols in the Catholic Church that originates from ancient Egypt. Now, the Fleur de Lis is like the lily. In Catholicism, lilies symbolize purity and chastity, which is why the Fleur de Lis historically represented the Virgin Mary, aka the Black Madonna, aka the Queen of Sheba, aka Isis, aka Hathor, aka Queen of Tai. I did a video on that. You should check that out. Coins from the 11th century, noble seals, statues, and stained glass windows depict Mary holding the flower. So apparently, in the 11th century, Europe, that's when the Black Madonna and Child originated, which I find weird because supposedly Jesus and his mother were well known before that around the entire world. I mean, way before that. Before I talk about the lily, I want to explain something. Apparently, the lotus and the lily were very important in ancient Egypt, both symbolizing rebirth and rejuvenation. Apparently, the difference between the two is that the lily leaves are typically resting just at water level, while lotus leaves are elevated above the water's surface at a distance. The easiest way to tell them apart is by their leaves. Lily leaves rest on the water, while lotus leaves are always growing up over the water. So when you look at the fleur-de-lis, it seems to be a combination of the lily and the lotus. Leaves resting on the water, and leaves growing up over the water. And again, both representing rebirth and rejuvenation. So it did make sense to combine the two. Now, the lily in ancient Egypt, the blue water lily, also known as the blue lotus or sacred blue lily, is prominently featured on the pillars, stone altars, and other parts of ancient Egyptian temples. It holds a significant place in Egyptian mythology and is regarded as a symbol of the sun and a sign of rebirth. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the Catholic Church is about the sun. It's sun worship. In various instances, you will see the Pope or other Catholic priests have ornaments with the sun. Note that the cross is the representation of the sun. It's not about Jesus dying on the cross. That's a bunch of nonsense. But even if you believe that, he is supposed to be the light, which is the sun. The sun goes to its lowest point, rises in the east, goes to its highest point, sets in the west, goes back to its lowest point. It's sun worship. And we should be thankful for the sun, absolutely, but the ancient Egyptians did believe in a higher power. Don't get it twisted. Akhenaten, however, is the one that believed the sun was the main god, which bothered a lot of people, but that's not mainly why the people rebelled against him. They rebelled because he was feckless as a leader. When the King James 50 scholars reimagine Akhenaten as Jesus, notice the same scenario comes into play. Jesus was feckless as a leader. That is why he got done in by the people. The heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, aka Jesus, is the originator of the Catholic Church. After he died, his followers eventually went up into Europe and spread the faith. The Africans wanted to forget about Akhenaten because they considered him an embarrassment. Black people spread their faith all throughout Europe, hence the Black Madonna and Child and the Catholic Church. But eventually there was a backlash towards black people in Europe that white people do not want to talk about. You could check out my video for more details on this. The Madonna goes from black to white, and you wouldn't believe the ridiculous excuses people give for the Madonna being black. I mean, there's always a concerted effort to explain away black people in history. It's really pathetic.
No real explanation in the Catholic Church as to why black Madonnas exist. For a long time, they were going around telling people that they turned black because of the soot that was in the church, as a result of the candles. But then you'd have a statue of St. Joseph right next to it, and it would not turn black. There's a movement, it's very underground, to basically detract attention from these black Madonnas. There are over 500 of them, I think, in France alone. And of course, throughout South America, there are a lot of them, because what the church did oftentimes was they would darken the skin of the Madonna to more or less appeal to the indigenous people. The idea behind the Black Madonna, one of the explanations was that it represents, the black represents fertility. So a lot of people assume that the Black Madonna by itself has some sort of racial significance. But in the lexicon of the church, it does not really. It's more this idea of mystery, black representing mystery, the mystery of the Madonna, the mystery of this mother, this Virgin Mother, the idea that all things are possible. Once you have that mysterious color that exists there, anything is possible.
Have you noticed that when a black person or people are in history, it is always explained away? According to most white historians, we can't do anything right in history. It's either slavery or barbarism in Africa. the notion that it is a black woman and her child is beyond comprehension for them. They cannot fathom that possibility. Being white, no explanation needed. Being black, a whole bunch of explanations have to come about. They deliberately changed it from black to white and perpetrated a fraud that it was originally white. There are over 400 black Madonnas throughout Europe, and most of them are in France. So black people were a huge part of French society, but eventually there was a rebellion against those black aristocrats. And then white aristocrats took over, but before that, France was involved with various countries around the world and especially in Africa. So when those white aristocrats took over from the black aristocrats, they eventually assumed the roles of the various colonies black people once had and did things differently. Hence, the various colonies France has or had in Africa. You seriously should ask yourself, where did this attitude towards black people come from? The untold story of black people in Europe and the origin of racism. If you didn't click the link earlier, that's one of my videos that you should check out. Be patient and watch it to the end. Dishonest white historians are controlling the narrative of black or African history. This is unacceptable. People have noticed that white people are the ones dictating the information about black or African history, and black or Africans can't get a word in edgeways, and they think that this is okay? If we did it to them, they would have a problem, but they do it to us, and they wonder, why are we complaining? Blacks and Africans are starting to speak up about their history and the West's duplicity in their affairs, and we're not going to stop. We're going to expose the lies and misinformation and make sure that this never happens again. We are going to shame them on the world stage. You even see some of that now. At the UN 78th General Assembly this year, various African leaders were calling out the West, NATO, and the UN for their uncivilized, hypocritical practices. The Africans are starting to have a voice on the world stage, and they will shame the West and the entire world to do right. They will also take back their history. Only the most broken people can be great leaders. Modern humans come from Africa. Our ancestors went through trials and tribulations in order to become modern humans. So this problem that we have now is nothing compared to what we went through long ago. We will persevere and set things right again. Like, share, subscribe, and make a comment. Thanks.